Just thank you for that. And if you probably didn't notice it, but the last couple of messages I have been, the titles have been named after songs. And it doesn't, it's the same today. A little more like Jesus, a little less like me. And the words go something like this. I have days of losing a fight. I try my best, just don't get it right. Where I talk the talk, but don't walk the walk. And miss the moments right before my eyes. Somebody with a hurt I could have helped. Somebody with a hand I could have held. But I just can't see past myself. Oh, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. There's no denying that I've changed. I've been saved from what I used to be. Even at my best, I must confess, I still need help to see the way you see. Somebody with a hand I could have held, but I just can't see past myself. Oh, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. So something to think about there. It's interesting today that what we're going to talk about is 3 stories about things that were lost. Whether it be a person lost, as we mentioned this morning in our prayers, a person or two. Maybe you lost your keys. Maybe you lost your wallet. But it's always good when you find them and you can bring them back home. And our parables come from Luke 15 that we read about this morning. And the first parable is the parable of the lost sheep. At times, the shepherds have to go into the open country to seek food and water for their flocks. If you remember from a message past, it was in the land of milk and honey, but not quite the milk and honey that we are thinking of, not the lush grass and the fat cows with lots of milk. It was a lot of rocks and a lot of goats and an area that was good for growing grapes. Not quite the area that we have in mind. So when the shepherds went on their journeys to find the food for the sheep that they needed to move to, while they were waiting, they constructed pens to keep their herds in check, using the abundant rocks to make walls and place thorns on top of the walls to protect the animals. Many times there was caves that was used to provide a roof over the shepherd's head and keep the dew off the flock at night. I don't know about you, but I remember years ago when I used to, when I went out west to fight fires, we made a tent out of black plastic and poles, and we'd sleep in that at night. But in the morning, that dew and that dampness was on you, and you always invariably got a sinus cold or a sinus infection from that sleeping out at night like that. But these pens that they made, they didn't have a gate on them at the time. The shepherd was always the one that stood in front and was the gate. So, one evening, a shepherd brought his flock to the pen and discovered one was missing. He had to have counted them because he couldn't say, well, it must have been the white one. But they were all probably white. But he counted them. He knew that there was one missing. And he put the 99 in the pen and put some thorns across for the gate. And that was there to guard the entrance. So he set off to find that lost sheep. One lost sheep. The 99 were in the pen. He was not content with the 99 that he had, for the one lost sheep was valuable. And so he searched until he found it. And placing it on his shoulders, he returned to the pen to place it in with the flock. And before going home, where he lived, he celebrated the found lost sheep with his friends and neighbors. Now, most of the time, these flocks were a combination of members of the family. They had a couple sheep, and so they put them all and they have one big flock. And so that when they did find this one, they rejoiced and celebrated for that lost one that was found. Another story that comes up, the second one, it's kind of short, and we can read about it in Luke 15, verses 8 to 10. It says, either what woman having 10 pieces of silver, if she loses one piece, doth not light a candle and sweep the house, and seek diligently till she find it? And when she hath found it, she called her friends and her neighbors together, saying, rejoice with me, for I have found the piece which I had lost. Likewise, I say unto you, here in verse 10 it says, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner that repenteth. The shepherd and the woman really didn't do anything unusual. They were just recovering their lost property. But the special application was in how Jesus applied the stories. And before we get into another story, we want to just the area where Jesus lived, this area was in a world of honor, a lot of honor. We can see that today. If you dishonor your family or a member of your family, there were some harsh realities that could result. You could be killed. It was called honor killing. And it's still done in that part of the world today in some cases. The killing of a former member, a family member who has dishonored the immediate family, clan, or tribe was not unusual. And this kind of sets the background for the story that Jesus told next. Then Jesus told another story that was hard to imagine that occurred back then in the first century Middle Eastern country. He described a man having 2 sons. And the younger one said to his father, give me my inheritance now, because I don't want to wait for you to die. Now that's pretty, sometimes that happens today in a sense, but it's pretty rash and hard to grasp. A lot of dishonor there given to his dad. The average father back then would have beaten if not killed his son for the disrespect showed. But this father divided his estate, giving the boy his 1/3 that he would have received at the time of his death. So we are familiar with the story, we remember it. The young man set out for a distant country to enjoy the good life, casting caution into the wind. He squandered his wealth till it was all on parties and exhausted all his resources. But when a famine hit the land, he was reduced to working as a farmhand, feeding pigs. Remembering the shape he was in and how the servants on his father's farm had a better life than he did, he longed to go home. He was ready to go back home, aware that he would never be admitted into the family that he disowned. He thought he could be a hired hand, so returning home would be a risky business because of the dishonor he brought on the family and the community. But he was desperate and he headed for home. But when the father saw the son, he did something totally unexpected. And it would not have occurred back in Jesus' day to most anyone else. This is where the story changes. He did something unexpected. He jumped up and ran to meet the boy, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Now, there are two reasons probably why the father took this unusual action. He was moved with compassion. He was so glad to see his son. He was also aware that the community would punish him. So not just he and his family could punish the boy, but the whole community that he dishonored would be able to punish him. He demonstrated that he had forgiven and accepted the boy. The boy says in Luke 15:21, and the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. The dad then said, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. So if you had a feast and involved the community, it was a sign that they accepted the boy back into the family. The father wants the servants to know that he has forgiven his son and is restoring him into his family. Being concerned, the community will not have the same attitude. He instructs the servants to prepare and celebrate a celebration banquet to honor his son, who was dead and is alive again. So by accepting the invitation to the banquet, each person who eats the food will be accepting the son and who was dead and is alive again. We have folks that have left the flock. I'm not going to name any names. You know them. You've been here with them. But they are no longer attending. They may be wanted to go out and taste the good life. Taste the good life. And some of them have. There are some, or a few, that we've lost along the way that have tasted that life and they're gone. There's no hope for them anymore. You know, we have to keep these people that have left in our prayers. We need to keep in touch with them and just keep praying that they will someday return. You know, Satan is looking for these ones. He's out there feeding on these ones that have left the fold. They think that maybe they're strong, but they find that they are the weaklings, the ones that are most vulnerable when they leave the church. We just need to pray that they have a chance to come back. And now the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. So the celebration is going on. And, you know, we have two sons in this story. So the second one returns from the field and asks, what is going on with this celebration? And he became angry when he was told that the other son had returned, and he refused to go in to the celebration. Wondering how his father could allow the dishonor on the family, he dishonors his father again. He dishonored his father by refusing to participate. So in this patriarchal society, the father should now discipline the oldest son for disrespecting him. But again, the father does something unexpected. He went out and pleaded with him. Although he never left home, the boy does not really know his father. In Luke 15:31 and 32, it says, and he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad. For this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. The actions of this father would not have been taken by any other father like this in the past. Jesus' favorite theme was the paternal love of God, and in this story, he broke through all the conventional attitudes about love and honor to release a portrait of God that is both marvelous and divine. There's one word that summarizes the Father's action, and that's grace. Can we understand it better? This teaching has literally turned our world upside down. I trust that you have come to know the grace that Jesus talks about in these stories. Our closing hymn is number 3.